Hello everybody, as has been introduced, my name is Stephen Lua and I'm joined here by Hasina, and we're here today to talk about the opportunities in infrastructure and technology to create a clean, reliable and affordable future. In terms of opportunities, I think one of the best ways of looking at opportunities is to look at the challenges, and what better way to look at challenges than to think about bigger picture things. At Unitrove, we have a mission. And our mission is to create a virtuous world for the next 1,000 generations. But what does that mean? Virtuous to some people may mean one thing and may mean another thing. And for us, it's all about ensuring that we're trying to do the best we can and being good behind all our intentions and trying to enact on those things. And for the next 1,000 generations is the idea that we are looking at long-term focus rather than sort of short-termism. So how do we focus about those opportunities? At Unitrove, one of the best ways of us being able to do that is to look at sustainability and framing it from a UN Sustainable Development Goal framework. It's a really great way of being able to think about what are the biggest problems in society, not just focusing on the small, narrow aspects of technology that we might be focusing on. For those of you that are not aware about the UN Sustainable Development Goals, these are what we would kind of say are the biggest challenges in the whole of the world. Focusing it, for example, number 1, how do we eliminate poverty? Followed by number 2, how do we have zero hunger in the world? And there's a whole suite of different sustainable development goals, right the way through to clean energy and things like this.
Thanks, Stephen. And yes, just to reiterate, at Unitrove, we're trying to use the UN SDG goals as a framework, but of course it's not limited to the goals that are listed here. There are many challenges out there, and of course as one company we can't possibly solve them all. What we're trying to say is there is opportunity in the challenge, and that there's a responsibility that when new innovations, when we talk about decarbonisation, we talk about the opportunity for society as well as the sea, is to understand that we can't solve a problem and create new problems. How can we take a holistic approach to solving the challenges around decarbonisation whilst creating opportunities and not new problems along the way?
Yeah, so one of the things that we thought about at Unitrove is to try to see how we're able to tackle each of these goals in some way, shape or form. Now, it might be that some organisations will be able to focus a lot more on some of these particular goals than others, but at the same time, one of the great ways of being able to find opportunities is to look beyond the near-term sort of challenges that we think that we need to solve and realising there's a bigger picture. For example, clean energy. Is it an opportunity to eliminate poverty? Around 712 million people around the world live or earn just less than $2.15 a day. That's 1 in every 11 people around the world. And sometimes it's quite difficult to wrap your head around that possibility. You know, how is it that people can live on such small amounts? And yet, you know, I think a lot of our fear comes from sort of, you know, are we going to earn enough? Are we going to do well enough for ourselves? But yet, you know, it's a relative thing. And of course, you know, those that are on those small amounts of money are in the most need. But yet, you know, I think it's very easy for us to kind of sit and feel that we're struggling ourselves. And again, I think everybody has a relative challenge. I'm not saying that we should just be focusing purely on those people that are working and earning less than that, but I think it's about trying to find ways of being able to see how to frame the picture on sort of clean energy and the opportunities. And you'll see that with this no poverty, it's the biggest one, and because it's one of the biggest goals that the UN has focused itself on, you'll see that the other goals are all fitting into that. So, for example, what affects the poverty? It's about the quality of the life. It's about the quality of the education. It's about reducing inequality. It's about giving them good jobs. It's about a whole suite of different things that we'll find out later on as we speak more about the different SDGs, how they frame into this bigger picture. But at the end of the day, if you know, technology is fantastic, and of course, you know, we're here today to talk about opportunities in infrastructure and technology. But it's no good having technology if it's not able to serve society. And in this case, if we've got people living in the world in poverty, then we need to be asking bigger questions of what we're actually doing in the world. UN SDG number 2, zero hunger. So again, how can we use clean energy as a way of being able to solve some of these big problems? One of those opportunities could be in terms of looking at the opportunity for green hydrogen as a feedstock to clean fertilizers. Of course, fertilizers are super important to be able to feed the world's population. And in fact, over about 50% of the world's population or the world's food production actually depends on an ammonia-based fertilizer. Now, of course, there's a lot of discussion around green ammonia, and green ammonia being the product of green hydrogen and nitrogen in some sort of virtuous cycle. But of course, as Unitrove, we're focused a lot on the green hydrogen technologies. And so there could be a fantastic opportunity that if we're able to scale up green hydrogen as an energy source, that this could also be used as a feedstock for important chemicals like fertilizers, which will be able to be used to keep the world nourished. And of course, it's not just about the food production. Of course, we could be producing food on a massive scale, and there are probably more systemic issues that are underlying this thing, but at least this is one of the great opportunities that one can look at when, for example, trying to tie connections between what they're doing and the bigger picture. So as I say, at Unitrove, we're focused a lot on delivering kind of clean fuels as a service. And whilst we're focusing at this moment on the transportation sector, and of course, there's an energy sector as well that can make use of that. But sometimes we're not thinking about some of the other aspects as well, like use of hydrogen as a chemical feedstock, which can solve some of the bigger problems like food production. And again, if we're able to supply or support the world's food production and get those to the people in the best way, shape or form, then that will also feed into SDG number 1 in terms of trying to eliminate the poverty as well. SDG number 3, good health and well-being. Now, we're here obviously to speak about maritime, and we could speak more broadly, but the idea from us, from Unitrove, is to look at zero-emission fuels as a means to be able to improve air quality. Now, why does that really matter? Well, again, if you've not got good air quality, then the health of people and society is not going to be great. And if they're falling ill or there's health issues, then of course, that's going to just contribute to sort of the downside of society as well. So, in terms of the maritime sector, what are the key statistics that we've seen? Well, we understand that the shipping sector alone is responsible for around 400,000 premature deaths and 14 million cases of childhood asthma. Again, a lot of this has been derived from the fuels that are used in the maritime sector, and that's actually what's allowed some of the regulations like the sulfur emissions cap to be put into place. And in doing that, that's obviously going to be helping towards contributing towards that. But is that going to be enough? For example, what about nitrous oxides? Is that going to be impacting on air quality as well? So these are all kind of different aspects that we need to think about. And I know, for example, that some people, whilst we were talking about ammonia in the previous slide and using that as kind of fertilizers for fueling kind of the world's population, at the same time it's also been discussed as a marine fuel. And there could be opportunities there to be able to use that, and it's a zero carbon fuel. But at the same time, there are safety concerns around the use of such a product. And one of the aspects of the SDGs, if we focus in on opportunities in SDGs, is looking around kind of the safety aspects around chemicals and handling of chemicals. So there's kind of a big picture aspect in terms of if we're able to help clean the environment and give good quality air, people can live better, and when people live better, they can think and feel like they're able to do the best for society as well. So it's more of a virtuous circle, really. Quality education. Now, education comes in all different shapes and sizes. For the maritime sector, we've obviously identified marine training as one of the big issues. What's quite interesting at Unitrove is that although we've been focused a lot around technology and development of technology, I think there's often quite a lot of an obsession around technology, that we think that technology is able just to solve the world's problems by magic. I don't believe that is the case. I think the best thing that technology is able to do is to provide the kind of the opportunities for rethinking what is possible. And whilst we can have fantastic sort of innovations like the internet or other sort of fantastic innovations that have come over the past centuries, leading to where we are today, that again, these new innovations have still never solved the real true problems that society faces. Sort of new society challenges evolve as well. So yeah, it's about trying to make sure that we are equipping people with the right understanding about what these technologies can do. And education is a real key part of that. In those places where there isn't education, it just makes it really, really difficult to be able to allow people to understand what is potentially the right thing to do, or maybe the best thing to do for the circumstances. And likewise, in the maritime sector, we're developing hydrogen technologies. And it's great that we can deliver fueling stations that will fuel hydrogen boats that may be autonomous, but at the same time, we have a group of people that need to be able to interact with these technologies. And so without the importance of training and focusing on that, then it's going to be next to impossible to enforce these technologies. Or in any case, it's not a good idea just to say, hey, this is the technology we're going to go forwards with, and you're just going to have to get on with it, just because we think that this technology is going to solve the world's problems. And so those people on the crew just feel like maybe they just get stuck with what they have to do and just put up with these kind of new innovations. And I don't think that's quite the right way to think about things. So one of the things that we try to do, or there's two kind of things. So one of the things is we're focusing on training, but also how do we innovate in the sector of training? And one of those ways is by using artificial intelligence. One of the things that we've done is to develop a virtual reality solution which can allow people to understand how a fueling station looks like, interacting with it without the physical technology being in front of us. And in doing that, it means that we're able to make education more widely available, because now you're not having to spend millions of pounds on a piece of fueling infrastructure, which is very difficult to replicate and very difficult to get people to be in a certain geography to be able to see those assets in front of them and interact with them. Whereas if we make it digital, you could be wearing that headset anywhere in the world, and you could be interacting with that digital asset and get a real strong understanding of what this technology looks like way before you actually get to see the physical technology and interact with it. And in the other aspect of training, one of the other things that we're strongly working on is development of international standards and regulations. So in a sector where hydrogen is becoming quite a new thing, and also liquid hydrogen is one of our specialities, is that sometimes there isn't a framework for being able to push these kind of new technologies. People are worried about, if we use this hydrogen in certain contexts, will it cause explosions, and how big will those devastations be? Are we doing the right things around that? And so if we're able to sort of help provide education through the development of these standards and regulations, people will then be able to use these as a framework to be able to develop technologies and be confident that what they're developing will work safely and reliably, and just allow that new wave of innovation to be built on top of it as well. Number 5, SDG number 5, gender equality. So what are we doing? Well, the marine sector is one of the most interesting sectors that we've been involved in. In fact, actually, we never started our journey in the marine sector. We were brought into it. But one of the most interesting things that we found out is it's one of these sectors that is incredibly challenging from a sort of an empowerment of women and DEI and things like that. In fact, the statistics shows that only 1.2% of seafarers globally are women. And if we add sort of, this statistic alone sort of then opens up a whole can of worms of other different aspects of how are women being positioned in certain sort of types of jobs? What kind of roles are they able to face? What about the pay equality gap? And here, for example, another statistic that only 2% of venture capital funds are allocated to female-founded startups, where actually, if we're preventing a whole, half the proportion of people on these potential new ideas that could be coming onto the table to solve the world's challenges, then we're doing something wrong. And I think one of the important things that we want to do is to try to kind of like look at these kind of things again and see how we can best support these initiatives. From our perspective, it's about trying to improve. In Unitrove, we have, for example, 50% of the board are women, and we want to make sure that the most senior are there as well, and making those key decisions. Because if we continue to do the same things in the industry, we're always going to get the same things. And so, actually, one of the opportunities is by enabling sort of a wider diversification of opportunity to other wider members of the society, you're probably going to likely generate better ideas, more ideas that are going to be testing different opportunities and possibilities. If, for example, you've got one type of population making certain decisions, then there's going to be a lot of groupthink. And so the idea of bringing in other ideas and people, diversity in that, will give new opportunities to these kind of ideas as well.
Yes, and just leading on from that, I'm an example here of, being a female, being a person of colour, and the senior leadership team of a technology, fuel infrastructure company, and we really do believe that, it's a wider conversation we see it globally happening around. If you bring diversity in the room, if you bring different people from different experiences, there's so many different categories of, diversity, and it can be complex, it can be intimidating even to think, well, where do I start? And I think that's why having a peer network and actually creating a safe environment for that conversation to even make mistakes, even because if you don't have conversation, then change really isn't going to happen. If you isolate people, it can make people feel defensive, and we really want to encourage the removal of barriers. Essentially, as you can see that there's an interconnection between the SDGs we've covered, and even leading on the education piece is touching on accessibility. How do we take a new approach? How do we bring innovation, but not innovation for innovation's sake? But how do we bring innovation to actually make a difference through the social side, the humanity side, the technology side, and then as we break down to the actual industrial applications. So I think it is really important that we really think about how do we do things differently, because we've got to change the status quo. But also, it's the simple saying is, if you want to get something different, you've got to do something different. And actually, by just widening the circle and inviting people in, you're going to find fantastic ideas that you just never would have thought of. And we've had that time and time again with all the different people from all walks of life, all different backgrounds, add value to what we're doing in the wider conversation. And I think it's also to say that, as we talk through these, is inviting everyone to think about not only how do you bring this to your businesses, but perhaps you have a solution. Again, it might cross over with something we're doing, but it could be something completely different. Perhaps you're thinking, I want to actually affect policy, or actually I would love to go. And, I have a network. I think, what we've seen is the power of community and the power of network is everyone knows somebody, and, new networks can be created to help solve some of the challenges we've really spoken about.
And again, you can see how these SDGs interconnect, because, of course, a lot of this inequality starts at a very, very early age, and this links back to education. They often say that if you want to look at where the challenges start in the primary schools, and you'll start to see that through the primary schools all the way through to university, that these goals start getting bigger. But it's quite interesting when you consider that. And so what is the opportunity? Well, the opportunity is then if you want to see how we can improve your ideas and pools and things like that, then start with these educational institutions, start at the early age, try to reshape people's thinking around what it might look like to be a seafarer. Again, it's these kind of ideas of traditional roles and things like that, and we need to be kind of re-innovating in this kind of sector as well. SDG 6, clean water and sanitation. And again, it's not necessarily the first thing on people's minds when we're thinking about trying to solve challenges in the marine sector. But again, you might be indirectly solving a separate issue, but you also might not be recognizing that whilst trying to solve one SDG, you might in fact conflict in another. And I think this is the importance of thinking holistically. For example, green hydrogen depends on the electrolysis of deionized water. Now, if we're thinking that we're going to be solving the climate change by producing huge amounts of green hydrogen everywhere, but of course we're going to need huge amounts of water as well. So one of the big questions is, what about that water that might have been used for drinking water in certain communities where they didn't have the availability of that drinking water? Nobody talks about that when they're talking about ramping up hydrogen production to such enormous scales and in certain locations as well. I think that's why it's important to think holistically, because if we were just to leave the industry to do its own thing, and we thought it was great that we've solved this problem of climate change because we've now enabled this whole green, zero carbon fuel to be prevalent everywhere, but yes, we may well have done it at the cost of clean drinking water. And so what has that done for society? But let's turn it into an opportunity. What could that opportunity be? Well, because green hydrogen depends on the electrolysis of deionized water, then why don't we think about linking that together with the production of clean water? Of course, clean water needs to be water of a certain standard, and there's going to have to be a process of water treatment and so forth. In the same way, there's going to need to be some sort of quality specification for water when we want to use it for production of green hydrogen. So in combining the two, there could be an opportunity where you've got two different business models where maybe you're producing green hydrogen as well as producing clean water for these areas. And in that case, you've got a bit of a virtuous cycle because you're building on economies of scale, looking at a market that you didn't really think was really possible. There could be other opportunities or technologies to think about this as well. For example, some people might be considering, again, the challenge of competing with decent drinking water for the production of hydrogen. How about the electrolysis of seawater? Again, there are different ways of looking at how do we solve the same challenges and trying to not create new problems when we try to solve problems. This one's a big one, probably one of the big ones for Unitrove. How do we make clean and affordable energy for all? Certainly in a sector where Unitrove we're focused on hydrogen and liquid hydrogen in particular, a lot of people will say that first of all hydrogen is quite an inefficient way of generating electricity or using it as a transport mode. We understand some of these arguments. People also say that producing hydrogen or liquefying it can be very expensive and energy intensive. So how do we do that in a way, but then also, that sounds like a contradiction to the mission of being able to make it affordable to all and also available to everybody as well in the locations where it's needed. That is a huge challenge, and I'm not saying that we have all the answers, but it needs to be on the forefront of our mind that what we're doing is not just an idea in its isolation. So whilst, for example, we're focusing on reducing the fueling stations to be able to allow that accessibility and availability of the clean fuels to the end customer, we recognise there's a whole wider infrastructure that needs to be developed to support that project going forwards.
Yes, and just to add to that, is that while someone, again, may look at this and think this is an unreachable goal, unattainable, is you need to be ambitious, you always need to have impossible goals, but as we all know, impossible, how many times has impossible been proven possible? And by having these, we set the bar high and have uncompromising principles and values. It's not to say that this will happen overnight. This is not to say that there won't be failures along the way, or there will be barriers or obstacles or objections, but it's about working through to have affordable and clean energy for all, and we're talking globally, because as it's been seen in the conversation it's not about one part of the world deciding what is right for the rest of the world. And this has also been coming back to including a diverse community when we're having these conversations. If you're looking to deploy or produce energy in any part of the world is to invite that community to add to that conversation as well. But it is possible, just like coming back to the first goal of no poverty, how many times I'm sure all of us have thought, why does poverty still exist in the world? And there's a numerous number of reasons why it does, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't give up that ambition to remove that, because we genuinely believe that people of today do want a better, fairer, and overall more holistic future. And I think it's important to have these types of goals to show that we're not going to give up on that.
And likewise, it's also not about one size fits all. There's a lot of discussion about the choice of fuel. Is it electric versus is it hydrogen versus is it ammonia? Is it biofuels? And again, if we focus on the bigger picture of trying to make clean, affordable energy for all, we're going to need a multitude of different solutions. And in fact, by trying to whittle down the opportunities to just say one winner, is not going to be able to help in the bigger picture of being able to make that clean, affordable energy for all, because the likelihood is that then you're certainly going to get a concentration of power in those industries that will dominate and focus on those fuels. And we've seen that already with how the fossil fuel industry is working today. Again, the balance of the power is in those that are controlling those resources. And so actually, diversity of solutions for clean energy is probably a good way of de-risking the kind of society's challenges. And so we also want to feed into that narrative and not be able to kind of allow that kind of balance of power to shift from, say, the oil and gas sector to a new single monofuel solution that will just create a brand new problem just with a different colour as well. But again, it also leads into partnerships and aspects, and you'll see that later on down the line as well. But for example, in the United Kingdom, we're all about trying to connect the dots, especially within the supply chain. We recognise the bits that we are able to do, but it's all about, what is the opportunity of being able to find that key partnership that you can connect together with, to be able to work together to also solve how to make this clean and affordable energy for all. For example, we might need to be working with green hydrogen producers because we recognise that's not our core technology. And in doing that, we recognise there's a bit in the middle where, for example, we would like to focus on hydrogen liquefaction technologies, which is not really a thing that exists in the UK at the moment. So, of course, if we're investing in these new kind of technologies to bring this kind of infrastructure, then we're kind of bridging that gap between the hydrogen production and the end users. So again, we're doing our best to try to make that hydrogen or even clean fuels derived from that as accessible as possible. SDG 8. Decent work and economic growth. So again, if we're focusing about innovation, there are new opportunities that can come from providing decent work. At Unitrove, we're trying to always push the boundaries, obviously in technology, but from societal aspects as well. But in pushing that technological innovation, you can also think about what are the potential jobs and things that you could be creating from some new sectors. So for example, these are just three that we've picked that we're also focusing on at the moment. Artificial intelligence, the idea that we could be using sort of visual recognition of technologies to make our hydrogen technologies safer. What kind of skills is that going to bring on? What kind of jobs is that going to create? Are we going to be bringing in new artificial intelligent engineers of the next generation? Are they going to be software programmers? These are very high value work opportunities that the UK or anywhere else could be creating. In fact, where then you're focusing on the development of green opportunities in different countries, maybe even these different countries will be able to increase the standards of living through decent work and job opportunities as well, which is why you tend to see a lot of these other nations focusing on clean energy as one of the big high agenda items because of those opportunities that come for the people. Blockchain technology, again, could we be having specialists that focus on the maritime and the blockchain and putting these two pieces together? Those are two very unique skill sets that I would say is in very shortage. But there are huge opportunities that could be coming because it would be such a rare and unique skill that would carry a huge amount of value, because to understand blockchain technology requires a certain type of mindset, but to understand how it fits into the maritime sector also will provide a sort of another kind of aspect to that kind of role, which then creates brand new opportunities as well.
Yes, and just adding on is obviously there is always the fear. The common question is great talking about all the new technology, all the new skills, all the new job roles, but it's also remembering that not to leave people behind and making sure that as there is an evolution to the skills that we required, that those who are existing within the industries to ensure that they are upskilled and not displaced. But also understanding that there has been this, soar in, wanting to go down, these almost like the shiny new toys, and all this new innovation is actually we're finding, for example, that when you're trying to look for certain skills, even within the UK, that unfortunately there has been a depletion in the interest in those particular skill sets, therefore they're outsourced, and therefore then you have to go overseas to get those skills. So it's really also about that, again, that holistic approach of really looking at across the board hardware skills, software skills, and everything in between. And also we talk about the working conditions as well. It's really important for us, even us, we talk about, we often people think about corporates, but it's also the SMEs as well. There are a lot of challenges when it comes to startups, SMEs, to create those working environments that we're aspiring to, and also therefore, of course, how can, then more support be provided, and even that relationship, come back to education, is you have, I think you probably see people in the news across the world is, where every time summer comes around, you've got all the graduates coming in, they're thinking, where do they go next, what do they do next, so how can we possibly build programs that give access to working opportunities and even more apprenticeships, or again, the world is the oyster in terms of what can we create on that, so it all really ties in, and it all ties in then with economic growth, because then you're tackling unemployment, you're tackling skills development, which all feeds back into the economy.
Great, and this is kind of our flagship piece. What are we doing for SDG 9, innovation in industry and infrastructure? Well, already we're pushing the boundaries in technology. Of course, that's our forte, and we're looking to build world-class zero-emission fueling infrastructure, which was launched with our world-first liquid hydrogen bunkering facility at COP26 back in 2021, and now evolving our technology to delivering what we're calling our world-first zero-emission multi-fuel station that could deliver liquid hydrogen, compressed hydrogen, and electric charging in a single mobile unit. Of course, these are really fantastic innovations that we're kind of pushing the boundaries to show what's possible. But again, we're looking at how do we kind of make these accessible and affordable to the end users. Reduced inequalities, SDG number 10. So what is the opportunity here? Well, it's about clean energy as a narrative to be able to help rebalance the playing field. Of course, there's the debate between the national side of things. So are we able to create jobs in the UK North, where traditionally, there's been the whole deindustrialization, and how does that sort of compare with jobs in the South? So could hydrogen for the maritime sector in the North be a great opportunity? But also internationally, how does hydrogen or clean energy opportunities allow them to leapfrog the existing status quo? For example, here we've got a slide where solar technology has been rolled out in the African continents, and now they see that they've got a fantastic opportunity in hydrogen. And again, there may be other systemic challenges, but there is that realistic opportunity that they could be embracing the new generation of clean fuels that will help drive their society and leapfrog the bad learnings that the Western world has kind of focused on. SDG 11, how do we enable clean cities and sustainable transport? Again, we have to think about this holistic side. Whilst we're developing these fueling stations that will be good for the maritime sector, the same technologies can be used to decarbonise road transport or rail or even aviation, which is one of our big flagship projects that we're focused on at the moment. But in all feeding to that, how do we go about using the same technologies and putting it in different contexts? And in this case, perhaps, for example, hydrogen could be a way of supporting that clean heating or clean energy for the end users and making that affordable for them as well as an alternative sort of power option. And again, our main focus here on transport, how do we make it affordable and sustainable? How do people get on the buses and know that they're going to be clean? Again, in London, for example, there are already hydrogen buses, so can we be supporting that as well? So again, if we're looking about where are the opportunities, you've got to think sort of more widely and see how we can solve some of these bigger challenges. SDG 12, responsible consumption and production. So again, it might seem like a bit of a tangent kind of SDG, but at the same time, one of the big things with this SDG is about how do we consume responsibly and how do we produce responsibly. And one of the biggest consumers that we have in the world today is the consumption of fossil fuels. And of course, with the clean energy, if we're able to embrace these kind of new kind of fuels that are taking solar power or wind power or whichever kind of renewable energy and harvesting that and generating that energy, then we're able to sort of save on the resources that we're extracting from the earth. And whether that's, your typical oil or your coal, etc. I'm not saying that we should completely eliminate them, because there may be some aspects where they are needed, but we should be consuming in the most responsible way. Again, a lot of people will be talking about this. This will be big on the agenda, climate action. So it probably goes a bit back without saying that whilst we're trying to push the energy industry, climate is a big thing in its whole entire narrative. Of course, we're trying to do our best to eliminate the global greenhouse gas emissions, which for shipping is around 3% of the global GHG. But of course, we want to try to do our best in all endeavours in supporting of that climate action. And that might not just be about delivering technologies, it might also be about being vocal. A simple person might be able to share a post on their social media platforms, and that might be able to send a ripple effect, and they can have that impact that perhaps, sometimes they may think, I can't have that impact, but actually individuals can make the difference.
I think a key word here is action on this one, and we realised how complex, as we talked about maritime, the complexity of the industry, but it really needs to be that action is taken, even imperfect action to be taken. I think that we've found that there is this desire for perfection and that hesitancy to invest in solutions, to do trial and error, and that is what innovation is. It will be trial and error. There will be failures, but the successes will be much more profitable, not just financially, but will benefit in so many different ways. So I think the key word here is action, and to always have action at the heart of those goals and those action plans. And we're already seeing very ambitious goal setting, and then we're also seeing narrative going, oh, we're not going to reach that by 2050 at all, etc. Like as soon as each industry starts to come forward, that number starts to stretching beyond 2050 behind closed doors, and it's like, no, it's not good enough. We've set these goals. We really need to put this action at the heart of what we do. And of course, there are so many factors affecting action, but at the end of the day, it's a simple reality. If we don't take action now, if we don't achieve certain goals by certain milestones, we are going to be in trouble as a planet. And I think just keeping that, not to have that as a negative overshadow, but actually inspire hope and coming together as a community, as we've seen through many things over the past couple of years, the power of community and what it can do.
Great. And I think the next two SDGs will go a bit hand in hand. And of course, nothing better for maritime than to focus on the solving of SDG number 14, life below the water. Again, we've seen some of the challenges around some of the typical oil tankers and the spills and the devastation it's caused in many parts of the world, which unfortunately they've been the parts of the world which are already disproportionately affected by the challenges of the global today. And so by us focusing on enabling sort of zero emission fuels, we want to do our part in being able to allow these technologies to prevent such kind of disasters from happening. And again, if we are able to replace oil tankers with something cleaner, whether it's electric, whether it's hydrogen or something else, we can do our best to be able to enable the life below water to flourish. And likewise, there's a very similar argument for SDG number 15, with life on land as well. If we're able to make sure that we use the right technologies, we can look after our sort of life on land. And in fact, one of the biggest challenges here is being able to combat desertification, which again, along with deforestation, one of the biggest challenges here are aspects that we need to kind of think about again. It falls into that that consumption pattern. How do we reliably consume? So if we can make use of renewables, we can then reduce the amount of sort of natural products that we need to be able to extract from our earth, and that will enable us to focus on being able to enable life on land, or life under the water. SDG 16, peace, justice and strong institutions. So what can we do to support this? Well, a lot of people think, well, it's in the hands of the politicians, but we also have to realize that we have powers as individuals. We can lend our voice to justice and we can strengthen those international bonds. In the maritime sector, that might be, for example, being vocal, standing out there and saying, it's not good enough to say that we're going to try to maybe achieve net zero by 2050 for the maritime sector. And so we've seen it with the social media. When people come out in their voices, they lend that voice to the justice. People do the right things. This is what strengthens our bonds. This is what allows society to do the right thing. And we at Unitrove are always trying to lend our voice wherever we can. And we recognise, we're just one voice, but we want to inspire others to also use their voice in the same way as well.
And just quickly to add is that, of course, there's that ongoing narrative that all business is business and everything else is outside of it. And I think we just live in a day and age now where I think as a society we don't want that. And we all have a responsibility to participate in standing up for peace, justice and other causes. That's not to say that we all believe in the same thing or exactly what those are, but I think as industry is to stand up. And we have seen it when big companies have then come together, different agreements, pressures being put on them by the consumers. So I think we underestimate actually that the actual value it can add to your business and profitability of business by standing up for and being bold enough to do so, and being a trailblazer and being the first can be very, very scary. But I think then you are able to sort of lead change and benefit from that change as well. And if it's of interest, then thinking always about what legacy you're trying to leave behind, as we've talked about before, not just this generation, but the generations that follow.
And finally, SDG number 17, partnership for the goals. What are we doing about it? Well, we want to foster those partnerships to achieve those global goals, and we want to show what those global goals could be. And here is just a list of many companies that we work with, but we encourage yourselves as well to reach out and collaborate, because we recognize that we can only do so much as a single entity, but when we're together, we can do so much more and do so much more for society as well. So that's kind of our call to action. If you think that we're able to kind of help support your endeavors, or you're able to support ours, then we'd like you to reach out, because we think that there's a whole bigger challenge out there that we're just trying to do our best to solve these challenges. So hopefully it gives you a good idea of the things that we're doing here at Unitrove, and I'd like to invite you all to think about the same things, to try and find opportunities where there potentially are challenges. Thank you very much.